Hey everyone, it's Jackie from Energy Before Matter Life Coaching, and I'm here today to talk to a creative arts facilitator. She is an expert and friend on bringing creativity back into your lives, and her name is Hannah. Hannah, can you say hi to everyone?
Hi, everyone. Great to be here.
I'm so thankful for you to be here today too. And I was just wondering, do you mind telling us a little bit about what a creative arts facilitator is and your story, your history? Just give us a little bit of background.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, if it's okay, I'll start with my personal history. I feel like that gives the best segue into this. So I was always, very creative and artistic growing up as a kid, really across all the arts. So music, painting, visual arts, drama, and yeah, I know I loved play. I loved like being creative in all different ways. And I just found as I got older, like we become more and more disconnected from this creativity. We need to rely on our left brain more and be more thinking and intellectual. Um, and there came a point in my life where, I didn't make the connection right away to losing touch with my creative self, but I actually got very sick and had this huge healing crisis. And I was in the hospital with colitis. I was like flat on my back. And then it took really years to recover from this episode. And I was just ill. I wasn't happy. Things were all going wrong. And so I turned to all these healing modalities. Like first I tried, conventional medicine, and I still wasn't finding the relief that I needed. And then I went to a more holistic route, and I got into supplements and, cleaning up my diet, taking out like a lot of stuff from there. And trying things like yoga and meditation and just exercise and everything that they tell you to do. But I found for me that what I really needed to do was just get back in touch with that creative space that somehow I had just like veered away from. Like I still considered myself, creative and artistic, but I wasn't really spending the deep time with myself in my creative like center. And I find that, or I found in my life that was like the point of power, because like I was able to feel empowered, like while I was doing art, like, oh, I made this song or I made this poem, like, look, that's awesome what I can do. And it released my emotions. I was able to like express myself. And then my art like reflected things back at me. So when I wrote a song, like the lyrics just sort of came out, and then I would be able to listen to it and hear it back and sort of understand more about where I was and what I needed for myself. And I started to do this like really across like, again, many different art forms. So with music, with writing, with visual arts. And I found that like these processes were really helpful. And so I wanted to bring them out and use them with other people, because I think people like when they're going through healing problems, like they sometimes don't think like about their art or about, like they're thinking about what new supplement can I take, or like what yoga thing should I do, or what oil, or what, those kind of things. But I think actually it's like our life force, like our chi, that we have to release. And when we release it, that actually heals us. Like that makes us stronger, more empowered, more ourselves in the world. We can show up and we feel more confident, like we have this, ability, and we're more aware of our ability through creativity. So.
Oh, I love what you're saying, because I completely agree in so many ways. I grew up very left-sided as well, where I wanted to go into science. I was told, you have to go into something science related because that's where a real job is. Going into
Sure.
the arts, there's nothing there for
Yeah,
you. You
that's
can't.
what they say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was similar, where I lost a lot of my creativity later on, because I was always focusing on math or science, and not that you
Yeah.
can't be creative in those things, but it wasn't the right outlet for me as well. So I completely understand what you're saying. I guess one of the questions I have for you is that point where you said everything was going wrong. It
Yeah.
sounds like at that point, it's where your body was telling you, your soul, the deeper part of you was saying
Yeah.
that you need to change. And it
Yeah.
was that immediate wall.
Totally. That's exactly it. Like I feel that in retrospect, like I got that, but at the time I did not. I was just miserable. I was like depressed and miserable, and everything was just falling apart. But yeah, in retrospect, it was, and I'm glad it wasn't something like more like some people go through these like, I don't know, near death experiences or something crazy, like a wake up call. Mine was like not as crazy, but still, like I think a lot of people have like what you're describing, like this wake up call, and that's could be a really powerful experience in your life to get you to change course.
No, so true. And sometimes I think maybe that wake up call just gets a little bit stronger each time we don't listen to it. So sometimes maybe that, if you hadn't changed your ways and continued doing the same thing, maybe you would have had that near death experience later on telling you, screaming at you that you needed to change something. So
Yeah, so
that's
interesting.
so
Yeah.
interesting. And how did you get into becoming a creative arts facilitator? What made you want to start empowering others to do this?
Yeah. I just feel like I've always had it in me, like just this really big empathetic like part of me and intuitive in terms of relating to other people. And I've always wanted to do something with others. I tried being like a teacher, like I tried like other ways, like career wise of like working with other people, but I found that like the way that I feel most myself, like in working with other people is like connecting through art. So that's one part. And I think a lot of people feel that way, like people who are artistic and creative, like you need to like show up as the artist, like with other people, because that's your true self. And that's how you're going to make the best connections with others. Um, like I find, it's hard like in adult life because everything is, I don't know, your job or your family, like there aren't so many spaces for creativity unless you're happen to be like a famous artist or a famous actress or whatever you're doing. But I'm really passionate about like creating those spaces in people's regular lives to connect creatively. So
That's awesome. And that kind of leads into the next question of why is creativity so crucial to help bring empowerment and power back into people's lives?
yeah, I think it's just this amazing space where like you are the artist, the authority, the creator. Like it's no one's telling you how or what to do it. Actually, sometimes they do. Like maybe people critique your work or whatever. But in the best types of art is when you can just bring your creation, your offering, and in whatever your voice is. So it's this like really powerful way to discover like your true voice and then express it. And yeah, I think like I find it so beautiful when people can do that. Like I love, venues like open mics or like community art shows or places where people show up and give that to each other, because that's not, again, not something that you see every day. And it is very healing, because again, it's like it's a new way, not a new, but a different way of relating than regular conversation on the street or regular, work interactions or things like that. And it's a deeper way of relating. So it is very.
I think that's a really good point because I know for me, I never used to consider myself the poet. I know I hated poetry growing up, but in the last few years, I found myself tampering, like playing with it, tinkering with it, and noticing what comes out, especially when my emotions are either really high or really low. It's a real creative outlet, poetry. And so for me, sharing that poetry is that next step where, an open mic night I can do when I used to teach. We used to have, my poetry sessions with my kids, and
Oh,
they would
all
be
the time.
amazing.
Yeah.
But when it comes to myself, putting myself a little bit further out there, I put a poem of mine up on Facebook once, and that was scary enough for me. So I guess for somebody who has this creative outlet, but they're a little bit more camera shy or scared to get out there, where
Mm-hmm.
would you start? What would you recommend? Like, what is one task that they can do to slowly make
Mm-hmm.
themselves more comfortable with getting uncomfortable?
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess there are two different things in that. Like one question is whether they have some like insecurity about thinking of themselves as an artist. Because if they do, then that's just something I would tell them, like, you don't need to, it's because they have some like conception of what an artist is, and they think that they don't reach that or something, but that's not true. Like there's no rules for being an artist. There's no one way to do it. If you make art, you're an artist. That's just it. So I would just tell them that first so that they feel confident in what they're doing. And then in terms of sharing it with others, so the first thing is you don't have to share everything you make. Your art can be for you, and then with what you do, you can pick and choose in what you're sharing. Um, Taking that step to like show it and put it out to the world is definitely huge. But usually when you do it, people really respond. Like you might not even realize how it's going to affect other people, but people connect to like these inner things, like these expressions that we put out. It resonates. And so even if you think that, for some reason you're shy or whatever, think of the people out there who are going to resonate from what you're sharing, and start there. And in terms of something that you can do, there are so many ways. It's very individual for each person. If you take my program, you would find exercises to explore creativity. But I would start with nature. Nature is the best inspiration. And so set aside some time where you're going to just be outside, whether it's like a park or a forest or a hike or your own backyard, and bring one tool with you, whether it's an instrument or a pen and paper, which is considered one tool, or whatever your thing of choice is, and just dedicate that time. Like you don't even have to know what you're going to create. Just bring your materials, put the time in, go outside, and let yourself make something.
Yeah, I love that. And especially with the connection with nature, because I feel, and it sounds like you're on the same boat, where energy is just all around us. And so the best way to reignite our soul is to reconnect with nature and the things around us.
Totally.
I really like that. But what if you don't see yourself as creative? I have a lot of friends who have this block where they'll tell me, oh, I can't do it because I'm not creative enough. But I guess in the sense, you have to look at what creativity is.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think?
Yeah, I never really understood why people like think that. I mean, I'm not going to question it. If somehow they develop this belief that they're not creative, like let's say maybe in school they were more, like you said, math and science person, and so they just labeled themselves as that, and then they just kept doing that for their whole life. So somehow we have to like convince those people that you're not just one thing. Like even if you're very talented in math, you can also be a creative person, and that can all work together in your life. And then again, taking the pressure off of art and creativity, because maybe they think they're not creative because they're just scared. Like I can't make that kind of painting, or I can't do that kind of dance. So I'm not creative. So taking the pressure and the rules off of like what art has to look like, and just saying that this is like an activity to engage in. It has other benefits aside from the finished product, and that might help them sort of just want to do it for its own sake rather than for the sake of like what it looks like at the end. And it does have a lot of benefits, tapping into a different part of yourself. So I would just like encourage someone like that to like give it a try and like see what happens before you decide that you're not creative before even trying.
And I guess it's a lock, it's a block, and we struggle to get past that block when we feel that way. So I know from my end, I've been saying a lot to people, it's a feeling, but I feel like we're not adding enough creativity in our lives. And it's not just a block of we're not creative enough. It's also making the space for us, like you said, the space to do it. And
Totally.
so one of my favorite questions to ask people is, what have you done recently that is creative but without purpose? And I'm always curious, because a lot of the times when we're trying to be creative, I'm trying to set up photos to post to people, or set up, interesting articles or blog posts. And so instead, when can I just create something without having a purpose for it? So I guess, yeah. What are your thoughts about that?
It's a really good question. And that comes into like, even people who are artists, like then suddenly all their art has a purpose. It's like their livelihood. And then like, how do you do it without the pressure when you have to make money off of it? And then if you're not doing it as your livelihood, how do you make time aside from your work to be creative? So it's a really good question. I don't have the easy answers. Yeah. Again, I think just like making that time for this kind of unstructured, like non-pressured kind of art, where you get to do whatever you want. And even if you don't want to do like an art project, like there are so many ways of doing creative things. You can rearrange your house. You can write a letter to someone that has like more of a creative flair to it. You can I don't know, put the things in your fridge and like a creative way. Like there's just so many things like that might, that are outside of your routine, like shake it up and add a little bit of flair. Yeah, I'm always thinking that, like, how do I be more like creative in my life in like so many ways? Yeah. For
Yeah,
me,
that,
like,
no, go
oh,
ahead. Sorry.
I do, yeah, I do love like a lot of my art is like creativity without purpose, I guess. But in the end, like you pull from that, like, if I'm writing poems that are just for fun, like me writing by myself, like maybe one of them will be good. So it's sort of a balance of the not purpose and the purpose. Yeah.
No, I really like that answer. So I guess the question is, what have you done recently that's creative without purpose?
It's yeah, it's hard to say with not purpose. Like I love writing stories. I haven't done anything with them yet, but like I love writing these like children's stories type thing, like again where I go outside and I just sort of like get inspired and I make like a story. And these so far like haven't been anything that I'm really doing much with, which maybe I should change that, but it's purely for my own like pleasure in writing the story. So I
I
guess
love
that could
that.
be.
That's really cool. I've been hearing people talk about writing children's stories, and I think it's such a cool thing because for some reason it's never been in my mind. But I've read so many of them, especially being a teacher in the past, that,
Yeah.
I love them. They're so great. And I guess creativity can be in anything. I know, going back to it, I have friends who told me like they would love to listen to me read to my kids because I get
Oh,
really creative about it and really expressive. And so, other ways could be simply like that. Or I know gardening is another really
yeah,
big outlet for people.
for
So
sure.
yeah, I think you bring on a lot of really good points here, and it's crucial. Creativity is
So
crucial for
creativity is
our empowerment.
our
Sorry for the
empowerment.
echo.
Sorry for the echo. Yeah, it's a necessity. It's not like what you said. What you were taught is that it was like this extra thing. Like it's not where you're gonna have a job. You got to focus on like the rational stuff. But it's actually like completely damaging to like not make creativity a part of your life. It's definitely essential.
So for everyone out
So
there
for everyone out
listening,
there listening,
make sure to
make
practice
sure to
something
practice
creative.
something creative. Something, anything, whatever you called to do.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today to meet with me and chat about creativity and help out my audience. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. It was so great.
And for anybody who's listening that's interested in working with Hannah, I'll post her email and her contact information with this video, so feel free to contact her. And I hope everyone has a great night. And thank you again.
Thanks so much, Jackie.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.